Welcome to the Classroom Café, where it's all about brewing the conversation between fellow educators. This special presentation is brought to you by the United Federation of Teachers and the union's Member Assistance Program. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this podcast inspires you, nourishes you, and motivates you. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Classroom Café podcast. I'm Selma Williams, Mental Health Manager here at the UFT's Member Assistance Program, and our co-host is here as well, Janice Acosta.
Hi, I'm Janice Acosta, Social Worker and Substance Use Liaison at the UFT's Member Assistance Program.
Our topic today is surrounded around nutrition and how it contributes to our overall well-being, and we have with us Leeann Rybakov. Leeann is a board-certified functional medicine certified health coach. Leeann, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to talk about health and wellness.
Yes. So let's jump right in. What do you think is the biggest impact that nutrition has on us as humans, as people?
That's a great question. So as you had mentioned, I'm a functional medicine health coach. In functional medicine, we look at health within these 5 pillars. So there's nutrition, movement, stress, sleep, and supportive relationships. When we focus on food, since we're talking about nutrition today, we do say that food is medicine, but food could also be poison. So the way we nurture our bodies with food could really depict how we feel, how we think, our emotions, how we go through the day. And making the right choices could be really complicated just because of it's a little confusing out there these days about what's healthy and what's not. But food does absolutely play a role in our emotional, mental, and physical health. It's very important.
Leeann, you just said that food could be poison. That's so jarring. Can you expand a little bit on that for us?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And we didn't mean to scare anyone, but I did also say that food could be medicine and food could be joy and connection. But as far as food could be poison, we're not just talking about a poisonous mushroom that you accidentally eat in the forest, because, we all do that. But just the ingredients that are in our foods these days, they could really wreak havoc on our bodies. So for example, I always like to go to sugar, and sugar is not just in the cake that we eat or in the cookies that we eat, but it's hidden in so many sources of food. And what sugar does, and this is where I say poison, where sugar is not the only culprit, is that it causes inflammation in our bodies. And all, I know it sounds like very, final, but really all chronic illnesses come down to inflammation. We don't want our brains inflamed. We don't want our organs inflamed. We don't want our gut inflamed. So that's where food can be poison. It could be causing inflammation and in turn chronic illness like diabetes, cancer, mental illness like schizophrenia, not schizophrenia, but yes, probably too. Alzheimer's, Alzheimer's is considered type 3 diabetes, which it's linked to sugar intake. So yeah, food can be poison if not properly eaten.
Or if not, if we don't watch how we eat it and how we include it in our diet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little bit more, right? We were interested in having you here with us because, as you said, nutrition is such an important role. And at the Classroom Café podcast, right, our goal is to nourish our members through the content that we provide. So what are some ways that our members can nourish themselves in a way that is holistic and healthy and even therapeutic?
Yeah, absolutely. So now that I've scared everyone, when it comes to food, food is to be enjoyed, right? So when I work with clients, I never provide a meal plan or tell people that they should be eating a certain thing and that only thing. We really have to find a personalized approach to what not only brings you joy, but also what works for your specific body. Like we're all genetically wired differently. And when I gave that example of Alzheimer's, it's more of like if you have a genetic predisposition to it, and you intake a lot of sugar, then you might really fire that gun and, expose the gene and in turn end up having Alzheimer's, right? So we hope that nobody does. But so when I think about food, I really think like we have to start with where we're eating the most often and where we have the most control. So if you happen to be eating out all the time, that's something to consider. But most of the time, we are having food at home, and whereas we can't really control what restaurants cook with or how restaurants prepare food, we do have control over how we prepare food at home. And this all starts with our pantries, right? Like we get to shop for our own food. Luckily, we live in America and we have access to such a variety of food. And sometimes that could make it even more complicated because labeling could be really confusing, right? Something says gluten-free, it says vegan, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy. In fact, some of those foods are more unhealthy because they have a lot of ingredients that are not good for us. So I mentioned sugar, but there's also a few others that we need to be highly aware of. So I believe that it starts with a really well-stocked pantry. And we do have that choice to make. And healthy does not necessarily have to be expensive either. There are multiple resources that provide, opportunities to stock a better quality pasta or a better quality pasta sauce. I often help clients find what works for them and eliminate things that don't.
And I'm so glad you said that, right? Because when you said, talking about the pantry and the things that we can control and, making healthier choices, immediately my mind went to, as a family of five, right? What is this going to cost me? Right? The bottom line, like I'm thinking about going overhauling my pantry and then not using half of the things that I've purchased, right? So practically, how do you think that, someone who is, conservative and thinking about making the best bang for their buck, what do you think some good ways to go about that is?
Yeah. So, there's different ways, there's a different approach. There's like the eliminating things that are not good for us, but then there's also the stocking of things that are good for us. So, you know, there's multiple sections of a pantry, but I like to start with like the simple stuff like canned fruits, right? Canned vegetables and legumes and beans. Those do not have to be expensive. Like a can of garbanzo beans is $1.99, organic ones, right? So it's just knowing what to buy and how to use it. Same with pasta sauce. We buy a really good quality pasta sauce at Costco, and they're often running deals, but the size of it, it's a big amount. So when you say that you have a family of five, this large jar of pasta sauce could serve as the base for meatballs, for pasta night. You can make a shakshuka, which is really, I know that sounds like a very complicated dish, but it's really not. It's just you crack some eggs into pasta sauce, right? It sounds complicated, but we can, and how, eggs don't have to, I mean, right now there's an egg situation, but generally eggs don't have to be expensive and they're a very good source of protein. They're not in our pantry, but something like legumes, right? Like black beans, you could make a really simple taco night out of black beans. If you shop at Trader Joe's, they have a really economical, high quality salsa. You don't have to buy 20 ingredients to make your own salsa. So it's really just knowing how to source. And I know that gets very confusing. And I mentioned this when we were talking before, that I actually created a whole resource of different pantry items and the ones that will come useful. And I know we're going to put those in show notes for since people are probably in the car or running or walking and are not going to be able to write this down.
Absolutely. And you said a word, you said a word that I look at in the health world as almost like a curse word. You said pasta.
Oh.
Like I am always, you run when you hear that word. If you want to be healthy, you want to lose weight or whatever your goals are, stay away from the pasta, the breads, the rice. Is that fact or fiction?
Well, that's a really good question too. So like I said in the beginning, every person is different and every body is different. So someone that is diabetic does have to watch their carbohydrate intake because the carbohydrates are turning into sugar, right? Um, So it is personal, and if you are on this like beach body craze, which is really not what I'm into at all, I'm really more focused on long-term behavior changes, like lifelong behavior changes. So it's to start small as opposed to do anything drastic. But pasta doesn't have to be bad. Pasta, like everything else, it could be, now we're finding there's so many different alternative pastas. Even Trader Joe's has like a brown rice quinoa pasta. You could buy a lentil pasta. I love, and we could put this link as well. I love Thrive Market. It's an online market that um, I think it's $65 for the year membership, but the pricing is 40% below store pricing. And you can get like buckwheat pasta at Thrive Market. And I could share that link as well. I'll put it in that resource. And you could buy all these alternative pastas. Now, what's a healthy way of preparing the pasta? If you're just eating pasta, yeah, you're going to have a lot of carbs, but why not mix it with a ton of green vegetables, right? Just one pot meal. You boil one pot of water. You could throw broccoli, string beans, asparagus, anything you could think of. And now your pasta is a meal, right? And then say you have that beautiful pantry, you could open up a can. I don't know how people feel about some canned fish, but like I'm a huge fan of sardines. They're very good for us. They have more calcium than milk, but some people might not like it. But most people do like tuna or canned salmon. And this is kind of where I have, when I talk to clients about like, well, I don't always have fresh salmon available. First of all, you could have, now I know we're focusing on the pantry, but you could have good quality foods in your freezer as well. Like you could have good quality frozen fish. This is a question I get all the time about frozen vegetables. Frozen fruit and frozen vegetables are sometimes better quality than fresh, and they're at a much lower price. And the reason that is that they pick the fruits and the vegetables when they're ripe, and then they freeze them. So you're getting it at the highest point of nutritional value. When you buy fresh fruits and vegetables like strawberries in December, they have to travel really far to get to us. I mean, we live in New York, so they do need to travel from like California or from Mexico or from South America. So they have to be picked when they're not ripe to get to us. So I would say stock your freezer with good quality fruits and vegetables. Go buy a whole bag of stir fry vegetables, right? And then tap into your pantry, get some brown rice or better yet, wild rice, and you have a stir fry. And if you could add some chicken to it or some even good quality beef, I know that's sometimes more of an expense because you do want to buy good quality. And then you have a really quick, easy dinner.
Nice. So you mentioned frozen meats, right? And having those things frozen. How, since we've kind of ventured a little bit away from traditional pantry, right? Selecting different cuts and types of meat, right? Like, are there things we should stay away from, right? As assuming that you're not a vegan or vegetarian, what are some meat options that are healthier than others?
Well, when it comes to red meat, my personal opinion, and there's multiple opinions out there because people have this keto diet craze, which we could talk about as well. Like anything labeled keto, I would say just watch out because it probably has like sugar alcohols and like terrible things that will disrupt your gut. But as far as red meat, it should be high quality, and unfortunately, high quality red meat in America is very expensive just because of the way our cows are raised. But you don't need a lot of it. We don't need to eat. A small portion could go a long way. I more venture on the side of like frozen. If you wanted to have like chicken or frozen shrimp, actually, you could buy that in Trader Joe's as well. And that could be a really good meal. Um, Frozen filleted fish, very easy to defrost. But if we're going back to the pantry, we could, have those canned options as well. They make canned everything now, and sometimes we used to think that canned food was bad for us, but it's not. Just like the frozen fruits and vegetables, it's a really quick resource. So, I'm a mom of two, so I know that my dinners have to be, accessible to all, and I don't really want to make two different dinners. So what I do find is that as long as there's something that the kids could eat, right? And I also don't try to make it a 5-star experience. I think we're all a little tainted with like Instagram and Facebook, and we're looking at all these photos and we think we should be preparing these elaborate 20 ingredient meals. We don't. Like, I have like a 5 ingredient meatball recipe, super simple, like, and then you use that pasta sauce. Or you wouldn't believe what you could do with canned salmon. You could turn it into burgers, patties. You could turn it into little salmon, not meatballs, but salmon balls, there's so much you could do. And like I think I mentioned before, like taco night is one of those ones, because you have the taco shells that I buy on Thrive Market as well, in your pantry, salsa, beans, black olives, right? And kids love to build things. So I find that my kids are more likely to eat vegetables if they are putting together their own little taco, as opposed to like if I present them with vegetables on their plate.
So you've given us some wonderful tips, Leanne, of things that we can put in our pantry, have in our pantry, even our freezer, right? I love what you just shared about the frozen fruits and vegetables. I've always thought, and I was always under the assumption that like frozen is bad, stay away from frozen, always go from fresh. But what you said just makes so much sense and provides me with a sense of relief next time I go grocery shopping. Um, so when we're thinking about all this healthy food, right? What are some ways or what are we trying to achieve in all of this and purchasing these healthy foods and making these pantry shifts and pantry changes, right? What's the goal of all this?
So I would say the ultimate goal is to fuel your body the way that you're supposed to, right? So I like to use the analogy of a car. Like, you're not going to put diesel fuel into a regular car, it's just not going to run. So that happens to our bodies, and we might not automatically see it. But what I do find, and I like love this so much, is that sometimes, like a week into working with a client, just like these simple changes we make, it's like they wake up again. And I always also compare it to like when you have a newborn baby and you haven't slept in like 4 months. And then all of a sudden, this miraculous night, the baby sleeps and you sleep and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I can see again, right? Like, it's this like rebirth. And that's what happens, because what I do find is that when you feel bad long enough, you get used to that feeling. You feel like that's the norm. So opening up your eyes by making small shifts, and that could be, there's everyone is different, but from my experience, it's been getting rid of soda, or changing someone's breakfast. Like, I've had a client that was eating oatmeal for breakfast, not realizing, yes, oatmeal is fine, oatmeal's great, but just plain oatmeal is going to make you so hungry in an hour, and it's not the right nutritional balance. So we changed up her breakfast, and she's like, oh my God, I don't even need my snack in the middle of the day, or the 3 p.m. snack, because she was eating. So I would say the ultimate goal when we think about meals is that we want to try to eat as whole food as possible. So things as close to the earth. So when I talk about pantry, I'm not saying we need to stock it with processed foods. Like, rice is not a processed food. Pasta, sometimes it's a little processed, right? But like tomato sauce is it's not like a processed food, like maybe like crackers and cookies. Like, our bodies just don't know what to do with those things. And the number one way to look at food is that to build out a meal, you always want to make sure every single meal, including your snacks, has a protein and a fat. That's what your body needs. So when we go back to that example of the oatmeal, she was starving because she was just having a very simple carbohydrate. But if you pair that with, let's say, a hard-boiled egg, and you top your oatmeal with some ground flax, that might be sound foreign, but it's an amazing. And for us women, flax is great for your hormonal balances. So it's really using food as medicine, right? It's kind of using food to nurture your body so you wake up feeling great. Like, just to see someone not have joint pain all of a sudden because we shifted out the dairy, or we really, really minimized the sugar. I mean, that's a beautiful thing. Sometimes people don't even need the surgeries that they're told that they need to have, because ultimately they just change their diets and their bodies just work the way they're supposed to work.
It's really incredible. As a social worker, putting on my social work hat, I think about how access is so crucial, right? To all of the things that you're talking about. And, that's my earlier point about price point, right? Making pantry decisions that everyone can afford, that everyone can have access to is very important. Even this podcast, right? Like having access to this information is something it's not readily available everywhere, right? And so what are some practical ways like we can have a breakfast, like you mentioned, or lunch or even dinner, right? That is both nourishing and provides healing properties, but also cost effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's different meals, right? So again, it comes down to having the ingredients at home, but also knowing where you're getting your food from. Most stores they're constantly running deals, right? The problem is that a deal on cereal like Lucky Charms is not a good choice, you know? So it's
But it's
more
so
for
delicious.
It's delicious and it's affordable and it's right in your face as you walk in the supermarket.
And the kids are going to eat it.
Packaged. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's tough. And nobody said this was going to be easy, right? But how important is it for you to feel good about your body or feel good in your body? And how important is it for you to feel about what your kids are eating too, right? We could go into the whole kids thing as well, but we could talk about that mental illness, right? About the increase in ADHD and ADD. We have just when we talk about food and like, yes, we clearly know an Oreo cookie and Lucky Charms has a lot of sugar, but like pasta sauce doesn't have to have sugar. Your salad dressings don't have to have sugar. Your yogurts don't have to have sugar. These are healthy foods, right? That end up having all this sugar, and not to mention like oils that are not good for us. But I would say, every meal is different and everyone has different needs. Some of us are able to sit down and have eggs for breakfast, right? But some of us need things on the go. So something like the oatmeal, right? You could do like an overnight oats where you have it in a jar and you could take it with you or in a plastic container. You could do like a chia pudding, right? My big trick, which I think is something, I mean, I've been doing this for years, is that always have hard-boiled eggs. An egg is one of those incredibly nutrient dense foods that you could have as a snack, as your breakfast. You could put on top of a salad, right? And one of the things my family loves is breakfast for dinner. And then I know my kids are having nutrients at dinner, right? So we will do scrambled eggs. I do love Costco because they have very good choices. Yes, it's again going back to we don't have to buy the Lucky Charms, but I buy this incredible breakfast sausage in Whole Foods. And the way I know it's good is I look at the ingredients and it's just chicken and spices. There's no sugar. There's none of these oils. There's no ingredients I can't pronounce, right? So dinner could be really simple. It could be some frozen broccoli that you reheat. You could scramble some eggs. You could make some sausage, right? Maybe they'll have an avocado toast. Maybe they won't. But I also my kids love olives. I always buy a big jar of olives, and it's a great little snack. So when it comes to your pantry, the number one thing is to check the ingredients. And the rule of thumb is if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be buying it. If you don't know what the ingredient is, you shouldn't be buying it. And then certain things have more than 5 ingredients, but in general, 5 ingredients or less, right? But if something has a lot of vegetables, like a pasta sauce or a different kind of sauce, that's an exception. Just try to have less processed foods. And even chips, I love chips, but there's good chips and there's not so good chips, right? So, there's been innovation in cereal, but unfortunately, like you mentioned, it's sad, but the best quality cereals are very expensive. But there are ways around it. You go to their website, you do the 20% off your first order, and you use another email address next time. You get 20% off your order again.
I'm guilty of that, Leeann.
Me too.
Oh, same here. Same. And look for deals. These companies, they most of them have the goal of providing good quality food to us, right? So, sometimes you could even reach out to the founder, especially if it's a small brand, and say, I'm a family of 5. When are you guys running your annual sale? I'll stock up. So there are ways, but as far as knowing what's better, and I know it could get confusing, and that's why I created that resource with and I even hyperlinked it. So different cereals, different pasta sauces, different pastas, anything you could think of, cookies, chips, all the things that I've researched. I have it in my own pantry. My kids eat it. And then you kind of have a general idea of what's better for you.
Love the what you just shared about looking at the ingredients, right? When we're thinking about redoing our pantry and making this shift towards eating healthier foods, when we're in the grocery store, there's so many options, right? So taking a look at that label, seeing what's in it, and I love what you said about if you can't pronounce it, don't buy it. With the exception of maybe like one or two. Well, I mean, you didn't say that, I'm saying that with the exception of one or two things, because I do love my snack foods. But, with the overall goal of choosing healthier options, choosing options that have whole foods in them, and keeping our pantries and freezers stocked with those things that are easily accessible to make quick meals, especially during the busy weeknights.
Yeah. And another thing to add with one of the quick things that just came to mind is like making a smoothie, right? Which again, you literally could have the ingredients in your freezer and in your pantry to make a smoothie, right? You don't even need to have fresh fruits and vegetables. You could have it, you could have frozen kale or frozen strawberries and mango, and kids love it too. So
Yeah, yeah. A little smoothie packed with nutrients goes a long way.
it does sneaks it in for adults as well. I mean, I get lots of greens through mine, and I can't sit down and eat that many green vegetables at once.
Yeah.
So it's a good way.
Okay, so let's talk about dinner specifically for educators who and people in general who are completely they have a they may completely be booked up, right? They have uh, events happening after work, or maybe they have a side job, right, that they do. How can is do you are you a proponent of meal prepping, right, in advance, and how what do you think the best method to that is?
Well, I mean, absolutely. If you could meal prep, and that goes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? It's always helpful to have things already ready to go. As far as dinner goes, and someone has a lot going on, I have a few, I just kind of have a few things that we go to instead of, again, like not feeling like you have to be creative all the time and that you have to create this beautiful dinner. It just has to be nutritionally, should be delicious, but and nutritional and nutritious, delicious and nutritious. Um, I love sheet tray dinners. It's a one-stop shop, and you could prepare it in the morning if you have time, or you could do it right before you put the oven on. So a sheet tray dinner is basically you have the protein and the vegetables on there, like something like chicken fajitas or shrimp fajitas, or if you're a vegetarian, you could do with garbanzo beans or with tofu, right? If you're not eating meat. But a sheet tray dinner is just one tray. You put it all on there, you season it, and it goes in the oven, and that's really simple. Like I mentioned earlier, taco night is great. If your family's into stews or soups or chilies, that's a great thing to make over the weekend and reheat for dinner because it's just easy, ready to go. You could, when you're making like chicken, like grilled chicken or even fish, make extra so you could have some left over for tomorrow's lunch or even tomorrow's dinner. Something like even like a big Greek salad. If you had grilled chicken the night before, you could put that on the salad the next day. Like I mentioned, breakfast for dinner. Like I always have eggs in the fridge, and we always have frozen chicken sausage in the freezer. I do like to always have good quality fish in the freezer. So the morning of, I could pull it, or even the night before, and let it defrost in the fridge.
So when you say good quality, elaborate on that a little bit.
Okay, so I mean, depends on where you're living. In Brooklyn, we have a fishmonger, so you can go to they're called Fishtails on Court Street. If anyone lives in that area, you can go to them and get a good quality piece of fish. There's also, I like to order fish from Fulton Fish Market. You could order a whole bunch, put it in the freezer. But also, if you go to like Trader Joe's, they have a great fish section. So they already have filleted bronzino. They have shrimp, right? So you could do shrimp fajitas on that fish. The reason I say good quality is that we have to pick and choose our battles, right? We have to eat. So there's no ceiling of the quality of food we can buy. but we also have to make it affordable and accessible. So going to your to the supermarket you shop at, you could talk to the fish department, ask when they get their fish brought in, so you know that you're buying it the freshest day. So you want to buy fish like the day it's delivered, and then you can freeze it because you know that it hasn't been laying out for a while. You could ask when they're running deals and stock up and freeze it. Something like salmon, right? You could buy it at Costco. They have a good quality salmon, really big fillet. Don't freeze the whole fillet. Cut it up into pieces, into serving portions. Put them in Ziploc bags, right? So you know that you're always making 5 for a family of 5. Put 5 in different bags, or put 7 so you have leftovers for lunch the next day, right? So using your resources. It you know People often think that eating out is or buying fast food is cheaper, but it's actually not. And it's if you're sourcing your ingredients properly, you could stock your fridge and your pantry with really good stuff that you could have available to you.
I was gonna say, even a lot of times the fast foods and the foods that we're buying out, we don't know always what's going into them. And, I think you said earlier they could have sugars and they could have other things that in the long term can lead to a lot of these illnesses that we want to avoid and want to really prevent in ourselves and in our loved ones.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the cost that comes with having these illnesses is much higher than preventing them with proper nutrition.
Mhm.
Prevention is better than cure.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
So the general theme that I'm hearing here is intentionality, right? Setting your intention for your meals and your health, right? And whether that's to lose weight or just to, for overall wellness, it's important that we plan, right? That we make
Yes.
a plan and execute said plan. And that's a language that I can understand as somebody that likes to organize and write things down but really thinking about like not going to the food shopping when you're hungry, right? Because then you'll come back with everything in your cart that looks appealing to the eyes, right? Because
Yep.
you're physically hungry. And even down to plotting out the day, right? Like a day that you can be organized and go to maybe more than one grocer because they have different things on sale at different times. Takes a good bit of planning, but I think with anything that's worth having, it's worth planning for.
Oh, 100%. And I would say when you were talking about meal planning before, that's great. But like the simplest thing you could do, and I do this every week because it just makes me more sane as a mom, as a working mom, is that you just plan what you're going to eat for dinner every night. Like you just make Monday through Friday, right? Like we're going to do breakfast for dinner this night. We're going to do tacos for dinner this night. We're going to do fish. We know Wednesday, my supermarket gets fresh fish. That's when we're going to do the branzino, right? Or salmon, or, Thursday, we're going to do pasta and meatballs, right? So you kind of know what you're making, and the dinner part will help you plan the next day's lunch for yourself as well. And I know most of the people listening are always on the go and have very limited time. And one of the things that will be a game changer is having a really good quality breakfast. And I know I keep using quality word, but like a nutritious breakfast where you're making sure there's protein, you're making sure there's a good healthy fat where, everyone's been scared of fat, but you need that, right? So maybe it's a piece of toast with almond butter on it, or that oatmeal, or a yogurt parfait that you make yourself that you don't buy at Starbucks, which costs a lot more than making it yourself, right? And again, look at those yogurt mix. Look for where it says added sugar, not sugar, but added sugar. You will be shocked to see what like a flavored Greek yogurt has. Whereas all you could do is buy a plain one, like a plain Greek yogurt, and put a little bit of maple syrup yourself in there if you want to sweeten it up. Or, I mean, I prefer bananas for a natural sweetener, right? So really having a good quality breakfast, you will find that when it comes to 3 p.m., you are not as hungry as you used to be because you are giving your body the fuel, the medicine that it needs to work.
What's hardest for me is with a lot of this is the consistency, right? It's so hard because we're talking about making small behavioral changes that have a big effect, but even sometimes those small behavioral changes can be difficult. right? But thinking about, you know, making these changes on a weekly basis or whenever we do our grocery shopping, which for some of us is weekly, for some people it's bi-weekly. Whoever those people are that do it bi-weekly, I applaud you because I don't know how you plan your life that way. But every time, essentially, every time we go to the grocery store is a new opportunity and a new chance for us to make different decisions that would be better for us, that would nourish our bodies better, our souls better, our health better, our mental health better. Um, so, if we have an off week here and there, it's okay because the next time we go to the grocery store is another opportunity and another chance to make different decisions, make decisions that feel better for us.
Oh, I love that you said that, because this is such a common theme that we all, especially women, and with our society, like when we can't be perfect, we might as well like throw in the towel. So you have a bagel for breakfast, might as well have pasta for lunch, have pizza for dinner. But what if we change that, and like just like you said, like no day is perfect, but the day is not over yet, right? There's always an opportunity to nurture your body, nourish it. So if you didn't have the healthiest breakfast, like what can you do at lunch? Can you add some vegetables? Or maybe that means going for a walk. Maybe that means writing a letter to a friend, because there's so many components to our health that even taking a 5-minute breathing break is just as valuable as having broccoli, right? Like we could get into the topic of stress and sleep, and that's like a whole other podcast conversation. But nurture your body, show it love. I feel like we're just kind of ingrained to like be so hard on ourselves, where if we learn to love ourselves, we're more likely to nurture ourselves better.
Yeah, hold a little bit of space for grace and forgiveness and kindness. And yeah, any opportunity we have a chance to do something differently.
So, Leeann, where can folks get more information, right? Like we've just talked for what, maybe 20, 30 minutes about this topic, but I know you can go on all day and I know there's so many resources out there. Where can our listeners go to continue their search to grow in this area?
Well, there's definitely no shortage of information out there, but it can be very confusing. I do find even I get confused sometimes. You know, I started working as a health coach out of my passion for health and wellness, but also to help people, because just seeing someone thrive is just so rewarding. I do always offer a free 30-minute consultation. So I'll share my resources. I love hearing from people. You could email me, you could find me on Instagram, you could find my website. So my email, I know people are going to have a hard time writing this down while they're running, but it's my name, Leeann Rybakov, LeeAnnRybakov @gmail.com. And my website is leeannrybakovwellness.com. And we're going to include in show notes a link that you could retrieve that resource with all the pantry items, and my information is on there as well. So I would be so happy to serve anyone that's looking to better their health. And like Janice said, it's really, it's those small changes. So diets don't work. They don't last. They're too drastic. Us humans, we're not capable of making such big changes for a long time. So I would say, start small, pick one thing you could do today. Like you're listening, like think about it. Is it going to bed 5 minutes earlier? Is it having, going for a walk? Is it just making sure that you're adding one extra green vegetable to your meal tonight? Or is it planning for your breakfast tomorrow, right? We talk about planning. So I would say just take a look, and planning is important. But if you do want to reach out, I'd love to hear from anyone, and hopefully we could connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leeann, for joining us. I truly have learned a lot. I've taken tons of notes, and I might actually be booking a consultation. So,
well, I would love that.
Yes, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Leeann, for joining us today. This was such a wonderful conversation. You gave us some great tips on ways that we can, do as the Classroom Cafe says, right? Nourish our bodies, or just nourish ourselves. And it's been such an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And to all our listeners, we hope that you were again nourished by the Classroom Café podcast. Don't forget to share. Once again, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Classroom Café. If you are a UFT member, the Members Assistance Program can be reached at 212-701-9620 or at mapinfo@uft.org.